Hi, this is Judy from Fox Cities Quilt Company, and this is Sunday from the Sewing Room. I've been talking to you lately about scraps, what to do with them, how to organize them, and all of those great things. But I wanted to talk to you today specifically about what I do with leftover 2.5-inch strips, and in particular binding strips. So we all have a little bit left over when we do a binding. These are a couple of bindings from quilts that I just got done doing. And you can see they're folded over. These are 2.5-inch binding strips. So I wanted to talk to you about these and other ones too. I have also a 2.5-inch strip left over from a project that I just had one. It doesn't particularly go with anything, so I put it aside too. And these are also 2.5-inch strips that I had left over from yet another project. Sometimes those 2.5-inch strips are from seshing, sometimes they're from binding, and most always I have something left over from binding. Let me show you what I do with those. Well, the first thing that I do is I get a little Snapware container because I don't do anything with them right away, but I cut them and I leave them aside for when I'm in between projects and I want to make a couple of things. So this is just a simple Snapware container. You can get these at a grocery store, Target, Walmart, a dollar store, lots of places. And they fit these 2.5-inch pieces just perfectly. Now, what I do with those is before I put them in my Snapware container, I cut them up. And I cut them into 2.5-inch squares and 2.5 by 6.5-inch strips. So this was one of my binding strips, and as you can see, I ironed it back open. You can also see that where it was pressed, if you want to get that little crease out of there, just use a little best press or spray starch and iron it, and it will iron that crease right out of there. The second thing that I do is I measure them and see if I have, from any of my scraps, at least 6.5 inches. This one is 6.25. So I'm going to cut this one into two 2.5-inch squares. This one is left over and this is 7.5 inches. So I'm probably going to cut this into a 6.5-inch strip. The other thing I consider is the scale. If I have something with a little bigger scale and I want to see more of it, I'll cut it into the 6.5-inch by 2.5-inch strip. And then again, I will measure this one. It looks like I can get one 6.5 and a couple of 2.5 inches. So let me tell you what you can do with those. Right now, I have, from the 2 extra binding pieces that I had, I was able to make 2 6.5-inch strips, actually more than that. And here is a 2.5-inch square and another 2.5-inch square. And then I am missing one, and it's in my little Snapware container, and a 2.5-inch square. And as you can see, I can make a block, and that block will be 6.5 inches square. This is what I made this block from 2 2.5-inch squares and 6.5 inch by 2.5-inch pieces. So there's a lot of ways that you can configure these also. So don't get so stuck on this has to match this, and this has to match this, and this has to be with this, and so on and so forth, like I've shown you here. Don't get so stuck on that. So let me show you the other variation from the leftover binding strips was this one right here. And as you can see, here's a 6.5-inch and 6.5-inch. I put the 2.5 inches together. I happen to like the purple and the gray together. I thought it looked really cool. So the other things that you can do is, let me show you. Let's take this 2.5-inch square. And here's some of my other leftover 2.5-inch strips that I have cut into 6.5 and 2.5 inch. So let's say I wanted to get some sort of log cabin looking block, but I wanted to be able to do it in some sort of different variety. Here we have light on one side and dark on another side, and then the darkest one in the center. So you can imagine if you put a bunch of those together and you put your lights and darks together, you would have a curve effect when you assembled these blocks into a quilt. And these would make a fantastic quilt. What I like to do is when I'm in between projects, I like to quick throw together 1 or 2 of these blocks. And before you know it, in about 3 months, I have enough to make, just from my binding strips, a little lap quilt. And it's a really interesting little lap quilt. The other thing that you can do with these blocks is, like I said, I just got done making this one. And what I like about this one is it has, with the purple and gray, I could come along here with a fabric marker and make a quilt label. I could put the name of the quilt here, I could put the date, the maker, and I could sign my name at the bottom and put it on the back of a quilt as a quilt label. So the possibilities are really endless. So don't throw away your 2.5-inch strips. Don't throw away your little scraps of binding. They make wonderful blocks. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.